So, Chris, both the White House and Secretary Hegseth are now claiming there were no war plans that were texted, even though the NSC says the text chain is authentic. So I want to play what the reporter who had inadvertently got them, Jeffrey Goldberg, had to say about it.
I saw Hegseth's response yesterday. It was just unserious. Obviously, this would, by the standard vernacular understanding of what war plan means, it was at 1:45, this is going to happen. At 1:52, this is going to happen. Then this happens. Then that happens. And then we do this. And then we do that.
Okay, so both Tulsi Gabbard and Director Ratcliffe tried to argue again. No classified information was exchanged. Is this an argument over semantics?
It is not. So I spent my entire career working counterterrorism with the intelligence community and with the special operations community. This behavior is inexcusable. And so, was there a judgment error? Did they somehow have some justification for creating this signal chat because they were trying to overcome, people being separated for other reasons? Perhaps, but it was the wrong thing to do. And I will tell you, a member of the intelligence community or the military, if they had done something similar, would be removed from their command, they would be charged, they would lose their security clearance. So
the president saying he learned a lesson is not what would happen?
No, it would not. And, Mike Waltz knows this more than anybody coming from the special operations community. He knows what the requirements are. And although they might not have had the granular detail in this text chat, just the acknowledgement of the operation and the timing and everything else, you do not do that because people get hurt or operations fail because of that. The bigger concern for me is minimizing this and normalizing this, because what you're saying as a leader that this is acceptable behavior. So for every intelligence community professional, well, it's okay for you to engage in this too. For the forklift driver who is loading a pallet on a C-17 down at Fort Bragg or somewhere else, it's okay to do that. It's not okay to do that because this is how things leak and this is how people get hurt.
Courtney, what more do we know about the nature of the leak and what's the reaction inside the intel community?
Yeah, so I think what we need to do is parse out some of these denials, specifically the one that we heard from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth last night. It was a very brief discussion he had with a small group of reporters when he landed in Hawaii for this trip. And he specifically said that there were no military plans or war plans. Now, in military parlance, that actually means a little bit something different than just to civilians like you and I, Chris. An operational plan, a war plan, an O plan is generally seen by the military as a comprehensive plan for a war. So think about something like China begins a war with the United States. Where would all of the targets be? What sort of assets would be used? It's a much more comprehensive plan, and that may be the nuance that we're hearing here. We also heard it from Caroline Leavitt. She put something on social media earlier today in which she also followed Secretary Hegseth's lead by denigrating the reporter here, Jeffrey Goldberg, a well-known editor for The Atlantic, saying that he's a well-known for his sensationalist spin. And she said here that no war plans were discussed and no classified material sent to this thread.
To be fair, Courtney, let's say, for example, the administration has repeatedly said that what's happening on immigration is why they're invoking war powers, right? Because that is a war. They consider that a war.
Fourth there, Courtney, on, well, I didn't know, and I cannot confirm that. This all, I guess, Courtney, comes to the desk of Waltz, who is the one who created the chat?
Yeah, either the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, someone in his office. It appears that they created this chat and, again, appear to have inadvertently added this reporter to it. But it really begs the question. These are some of the nation's top officials, top intelligence officials in some cases. And the idea that they weren't looking to see who was on a chat before providing, in the case of the CIA Director Ratcliffe, according to Goldberg, he gave the name of a CIA official who, that person's name being released publicly could put them in extreme danger. You would think that they would have checked to see who all was on the text chain, Jose.
Yeah, and Frank, so they asked the director of the FBI today during that hearing that we saw here on MSNBC whether he would be investigating or at least starting an investigation, and Director Patel said that as of right now, no. You are a former FBI official who has investigated leaks of classified material even. How do you see this?
Yeah, look, this is a no-brainer under normal circumstances, which clearly we're no longer under. This would be an open FBI investigation by now. And here's the thing, the FBI director, because of the high-level people involved, would coordinate the opening of that investigation with the CIA director, the DNI, the National Security Advisor, the Secretary of Defense. But here's the problem, Jose. They were on the call, those people. So in those circumstances, they should be recusing themselves from anything to do with this inquiry. The National Security Advisor was on the call, yet what did we hear today? The National Security Council, where the National Security Advisor plays a significant role, is going to look into this. That's not right. This should be an FBI investigation. You heard the phrase today, authorized classification official. I was that person for the FBI. I can tell you with a high degree of certainty that the information described to us on this exchange was classified, perhaps even at a top secret level. It's nonsense to assert that it was not. The other thing we learned today that really took me aback was that the president's Middle East advisor was in Moscow when he was participating in this commercial encrypted conversation. That is astounding that nobody took the time to say, hey, are we all inside the United States? Should we be doing this? He should have said, I'm in Moscow. I can't play on this call. So this gets worse and worse. If they had simply said, we screwed up, we'll fix it, it won't happen again, it would have served them much, much better.
Frank, if you would, and with your knowledge, so why is it that advisor to the president that was in Moscow at the time would have had access to a chat that is not classified, right? While in Russia, in other words, what would have been the best practice if he had been on that chat and had gone to Russia?
The best practice would have been to go to, if he must be on the call, to go to the U.S. Embassy Moscow and get in the skiff and have that conversation. But if he was on the road, in a car, in his hotel room, which you can assume is totally compromised and bugged, not to mention his phone heavily targeted, then he's made a grave error in judgment.
And now the question is, what will Congress do, if anything, about serious national security concerns after Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg revealed he was added to a text thread with Trump officials about airstrikes in Yemen? Congressman Pat Ryan, a U.S. Army veteran who served 2 tours in Iraq, wrote this: "If House Republicans won't hold a hearing on how this happened immediately, I'll do it my damn self." Congressman Pat Ryan joins us now. Okay, Congressman, have any of your Republican colleagues suggested to you they'd support a hearing? Should it be public? And why do you think it's important?
This should not be Republican or Democrat. This should be, are you a patriot or are you not? Do you care about our troops in harm's way? Do you care about securing vital, essential, existential national security information or not? I just came off the House floor. I was actually trying to work on a few colleagues, but I'll be frank, I have very little hope that any of them will show any ounce of backbone. Despite the fact that we know we're the shoe on the other foot politically, they would be absolutely out there hammering this. And so it's a real reckoning moment for the Republican Party, the MAGA Party. Are you patriots, or are you going to be partisans? Are you going to be sycophants to Trump? Or are you going to actually protect our troops and protect the American people?
Well, you mentioned that you thought that they would be hammering it if the shoe was on the other foot. I want to go back to 2016, and Pete Hegseth said this. He was referring to Hillary Clinton's use of a private email and accusations that she mishandled secrets.
Any security professional, military, government, or otherwise, would be fired on the spot for this type of conduct and criminally prosecuted for being so reckless with this kind of information. Even one hiccup causes a problem.
Do his very words now apply to him? Should Mike Waltz be fired? Should they resign? What do you think?
Well, they never should have been appointed in the first place. Certainly Hegseth and I and many were out there saying that he is not a serious person at a very serious time. Look, I was an Army officer, served 27 months in combat. Had I disclosed information in that way, I would not only lose my clearance, I would probably be at Fort Leavenworth in federal prison right now. And friends across the military have been texting me saying that, saying, goodness gracious, had we done this, we know what would have happened to us. There still has to be accountability in the United States of America, especially with such sensitive national security information. But instead, it's total amateur hour. And then today we see the White House double down and blatantly lie from the White House press secretary. There have to be consequences for this. And if the Republicans in Congress won't hold a hearing on my committee, the Armed Services Committee, as I said, we will do that. I was just speaking with our ranking member, Adam Smith. He is pushing for that. Our leadership is pushing for that, because that's what we owe the American people, and that's what we certainly owe any of our men and women in uniform.
But realistically, what are the chances that happens?
Well, look, if they won't hold this using the formal channels, I believe we need to hold essentially a shadow hearing. When the executive becomes unaccountable to the legislative branch, which is in Article 1 of our Constitution, then we need to escalate. And if this administration won't be accountable to the people, then we should have shadow hearings and other similar actions to hold them accountable. And my constituents, I come from a very purple competitive district, regardless of party, this is what they expect. Seriousness and accountability, those should not be partisan things.
Well, Speaker Mike Johnson has said Mike Waltz should absolutely not resign. Congressman Brian Mast says he does not support an investigation, although, to be fair, some Republicans...
That is a great question. I went with a home equity agreement for a couple different reasons. So, you know, how your home just sits there with all that equity, you can actually use that equity without taking out a loan against it. And that is what's called a home equity agreement. I used it to pull $112,000.
Support an investigation, although, to be fair, some Republicans have had harsher words.
There are likely to be classified briefings about this soon, but it's a concern. It appears that mistakes were made, no question.